Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface. The Warlords of Draenor expansion has been with us now for just over 6 months, and in a couple of weeks or so, patch 6.2 is going to hit the live servers. And in this short 6-month period, on my channel I've already created 3 videos about flying, or lack thereof, in Draenor in this expansion. The first one was how I feel about flying. I am pro no flying. I believe that you can construct the best content for a game if you are grounded, because that way you simply can't fly in and fly out and negate all the things which could be surrounding the objective to try and prevent you from completing your task. The second video was about Aviana's Feather, an item that you could get as a quest reward from having the inn in your garrison. This would allow you to blow yourself really, really high up into the air and then glide for a 2-minute period to your destination very quickly indeed. But it had a 10-minute cooldown. It's definitely not a practical way of trying to fly in Draenor. It's only good for short, sharp bursts. And then my third video, which I did recently, was relating to a bug on the PTR for patch 6.2, which actually allowed druids to fly around Draenor. And I took the opportunity to fly around the whole of Draenor to see exactly what it would be like currently. This video also allowed me to look at things from a pragmatic standpoint too. You see, I am not going to change my stance. I thoroughly believe that when content is relevant, you shouldn't be able to fly in those zones. It will allow for the best construction of content. But when content is no longer relevant, what's the issue? And I thoroughly believe that flying should be brought back in then. And with 6.2 coming out in a few weeks, we have to ask ourselves a very interesting question. Is the content in 6.0 and 6.1 relevant to Warlords of Draenor? Well, I think you've seen from a lot of videos, and not just from myself, but from other channels too, that the vast majority of us believe that the current content in the game isn't relevant anyway, because there's nothing which is putting us out into the world. We're all sat in our garrisons doing nothing. There's nothing exciting going on. There's no exciting content that's been constructed for us to warrant going out and being grounded to do that content. I don't class Apexis Crystal Zones as fun, relevant content whatsoever. They're boring and they're a grind to a means to an end, and it's really not that good an end because the quartermasters are so poor. So in patch 6.2, I absolutely believe that flying should be brought in to every zone apart from Tanaan Jungle, because in patch 6.2, Tanaan Jungle will become the relevant content, and the other zones, whether it be Shadowmoon Valley, Talador, Spires of Arak, Nagrand, Gorgrond, Frostfire Ridge, the content in those zones are no longer relevant. The way that Blizzard have introduced heirloom items mean that they are no longer bothered about the relevancy of their levelling up process. They are very keen and happy to have people level up as quickly as possible, with gaining 45% extra experience through the gear, plus an additional 20% through a potion that you can purchase in your garrison. And then even in patch 6.2, you will be able to get flasks that will give you an additional 300% on top for a 15-minute burst. So if this is the way that Blizzard are treating their 6.0 and 6.1 content, then clearly it is no longer relevant to the game, and therefore flying should be allowed. N'est-ce pas? Well, Ion Hasntgotaclue, God bless his cotton socks, did another interview recently, and instead of doing what I did in my previous Ion Hasntgotaclue rant, I took various questions and discussed them there. This one, I'm just taking the specific question about flying in Draenor. So Polygon go on to say, and yes, if you go to the description box down below, I have linked the full article for you to read in its entirety. When Warlords of Draenor first hit, some fans were surprised to discover that even upon reaching the new level cap of 100, they couldn't fly with their air-based mounts in the new zones. Initially, Blizzard expected to patch in flying at some point, but now it has changed its mind. Enter Ion Hasntgotaclue. Having looked at how flying has played out in the old world in the last couple of expansions, we realised that while we were doing it out of this ingrained habit after we introduced flying in the Burning Crusade, it actually detracted from gameplay in a whole lot of ways, Hasntgotaclue explains. While there was certainly convenience in being able to completely explore the world in 3 dimensions, that also came at the expense of gameplay, like targeted exploration, like trying to figure out what's in that cave on top of a hill and how do I get up there. Well, first things first, Ian, you say some correct things there, and just one thing I would like to say before I go into that. Where is this cave on top of a hill in a no-flying area that I would like to try and figure out how to get up there and explore? Because it's certainly not in Warlords of Draenor. But I digress. Yes, he does have a point here. When you introduce something like flying into an MMORPG, it's automatically expected that when you produce further expansions, they are going to be developed with that flying in mind. And the game sort of hints at that too, because they offer you lots of rewards where your mount can fly. And it'd be rather cruel if they kept doing rewards that you could fly and then suddenly said, no. And that's when we got this change in how mounts operate in Warlords of Draenor, with your flying mounts for the very first time being able to be used at ground level. Remember when they weren't being able to do that before? We're looking at examples here of the Isle of Thunder and such, where you couldn't get onto a flying mount even though it is a grounded area and just skim along the ground. No, you had to get onto a specific ground mount. So with them knowing they were going to ground you in Warlords of Draenor, they changed that and allowed any mount to be used on the ground. Fair enough. Now, it does detract from gameplay in a whole lot of ways. This is a point I absolutely do agree with, because there is little fear with content when you can just rush in and rush out. You need to save somebody, you fly in and then you fly out, and Ian will use this in example in the next paragraph. But then again, we also have to look at negativities like PvP ramifications. People swoop in, gank, swoop out. There's also no fear of them being able to be killed, or there's no fear of them being able to be retaliated against by people, because they can simply get out of combat and then fly up immediately before anyone has the chance to join in. So you can fully understand how it can have a detrimental effect on gameplay. Ian continues. Hasntgotaclue gives us an example. Before flying was introduced to World of Warcraft, if you got a quest to rescue a prisoner from an enemy encampment, it would play out a certain way. Players would need to fight their way through the camp. After, flying players could just fly into the centre of the camp, land on the top of the hut where the prisoner is, free him, and fly out. It made the world feel in many ways much smaller, he says. Well, that is absolutely correct, and that's what I've just said. But there's also, Ian, another way to kind of bypass that if you wish to. You can't mount up in this point. That's how the quest operates. You pick up the quest, you accept the quest, you try and fly, you cannot mount up here. So it's saying this has got to be a ground infiltration. And then when you set the prisoner free, you've got to escort them out of the area. You can't just set them free and fly off. So even if you didn't do that and you flew into an area, if you just then flew off, the prisoner would try and meander out of the encampment and the guards would kill it. So that's how you can very quickly and easily tweak that sort of thing anyway, regardless. And I'm not trying to play devil's advocate for flying here. I'm just saying that it only takes a couple of seconds of thought to figure out a solution to that sort of problem. Originally, Blizzard took out flying in Warlords of Draenor as an experiment, and Hasntgotaclue says that he would have bet, slightly better than even money at the time, that they were going to bring it back in eventually. But as they planned the expansion and watched others play it... Are people playing? 3 million people aren't playing right now, I know that for a fact. They discovered that they like the game better without flying. Again, I certainly feel immersion is a lot better, because the zones that have been created in Warlords of Draenor are gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and when you are grounded you do get to appreciate them a lot more. When I did my experiment with the bug in the PTR for patch 6.2 where you could fly, one of the zones which I do rather like is Spires of Iraq, but you go across Spires of Iraq from the air and all you see is treetops and some mountains sticking out. And it becomes a very, very boring, ugly looking zone because there's literally nothing to see there. So that's where immersion plays a decent part. And that's where on flight paths you don't particularly mind because you're just whizzing from one point to the other. And when you land, you are still ground based to continue your mission. The world feels larger and more dangerous, he says. There's more room for exploration, for secrets, for discovery, and overall immersion in the world. Ian, I just said that. At this point, we feel that the outdoor game in World of Warcraft is ultimately better without flying. We're not going to be reintroducing the ability to fly in Draenor, and that's kind of where we are at going forward. Okay, so the decision has been made now that there will be no flying full stop in Warlords of Draenor, which seems very short-sighted, because we go back to the debate we were talking about earlier, and also I recently did a very, very, very popular video, which is only a couple of weeks old, and it's nearly got 100,000 views, and it's called Ads Chats. I don't know if you've heard of these videos, people. And it's Ads Chats 49, where I talk about why they've lost 3 million subscribers. And one of the things that I mentioned in that video was something that I refer to myself as expectation of content. An expectation of content isn't how a developer wants content to last, how long a developer wants content to last for, because according to the way that content's developing in Warlords of Draenor, they just want you to do Apexis crystals until you fucking blow your brains out. No, expectation of content is how legitimately relevant content stays for. So if they bring in some content and people are still doing it vigorously in 6 months' time, the expectation of content is still continuing. That content is still relevant and fun to people. But if 6 months later people aren't even touching it, aren't even bothered doing it, then the expectation of that content can no longer be viable. And Blizzard have to say, right, if they're not doing it now, they're not going to do it. It doesn't matter how we try and force people, they ain't going to be bothered. There needs to be other sources of content. And that's why you really do have to look close and hard at having alternatives to do end game, not bottlenecking people into doing Apexis crystals, not having one PvP zone and no new alternative battlegrounds and things like that. There has to be a wide variety, a wide array of things to do. And one could argue with the removal of things like flying currently, that things which could get people out into the world, like archaeology, pet battles, those kind of things, they're not venturing into. They're not bothering to do. Because do I want to get on a flight path, fly to Gorgrond, run or at least mount up and ground mount up and go to an archaeology dig site and then do it again over this time to Frostfire Ridge? No, we're kind of almost back into a Cataclysm vein of how archaeology worked, which was awful. Absolutely awful. At least with flying, you can angle yourself to go exactly where you want to be, and you can, as people joke about, you can AFK while you're flying there en route and do whatever you need to do. Go have pee-pees. Go make yourself coffee and tea. So to me, this is a very careless thing to say, because I fully understand why you don't want flying in Tanaan. It takes a thick-skulled person, or just a thick person, to not see that. It's the new zone. You've created the content in the new zone with being grounded in mind at this time. Absolutely fine. Absolutely relevant. Don't let people fly there. But the other zones, I don't get. They're not relevant. And Ian, they haven't been relevant since about 3 weeks after the launch of Warlords of Draenor. You didn't support your game properly. You didn't put the proper content in. You didn't put choices for people to do. And the 6.1 was an absolute shambles. And you know it was a shambles. There's not one person at Blizzard in the development team that doesn't know that 6.1 is pathetic. Not one. You can give us all the rhetoric and spin on tweets and websites and be flippant about cat pictures and all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you right now, and I'm telling you people right now who are listening to the video, there is not a single solitary Blizzard developer that doesn't know 6.1 was garbage. Not one. 220 people. What they're working on, fuck knows. But there's not one of them that doesn't know 6.1's garbage. So why can't we now fly in those other zones? It actually, you know, and I'm sorry to kind of bring this up, but it actually might get people out of their garrisons, you know? Yes, they're going to be in Tanaan Jungle, but what do they do after they've had a little bit of a play in Tanaan Jungle? Well, they probably go back to the garrison again. You know, after they've done their grind of the rares for the day, and after they've done their grind of the Apexis crystals, if they feel forced to do so because they want the baleful Bukake gear, what do they do then? Well, they probably go back to their garrisons. Garrison shipyard, garrisons, still garrison is garrison. So, if they could fly, then it might actually be a great way to break things up. In the irrelevant zones I'm talking about. You know, oh, I've done my Apexis crystal grind. Oh, I'm about 3 steps away from suicide. What can I do? Do you know what? I'm going to blow off some steam. I'm going to fly around Gorgrond. Let's see if I've missed anything. Let's see what it's like from up here. Let's see if I can, swoop down and see if Pound Fist is there. Oh. It's a great way to kind of blow off steam. And then if you want to return to Tanaan, you know, after you've been talked down off the ledge by Samaritans because of the Apexis grind, then you can go back and do a little bit more. It would be a great way to blow off steam. So it's a very short-sighted thing to say. It's a very almost childish thing to say. Very stubborn, very obstinate, very kind of tantrumy child. No! No, there's never going to be any more flying. There is never going to be any more flying. And we don't want any more flying. It's very kind of petulant sort of behaviour like that. Very weird, very odd indeed. And I hate to take a cheap shot. Well, that's a complete lie. I love taking cheap shots. But maybe, just maybe, those people who bought your new Mystic Runesaber mount might just want to fly it somewhere as well, you know? Instead of thinking, oh, better Hearthstone back to Orgrimmar, or better Hearthstone back to Stormwind so I can fly on my new mount, which just cost me 17 quid, or $25, instead of just being able, in 6.2, to fly it around the irrelevant 6 zones, which are absolutely irrelevant. But this is where the shit absolutely hits the fan. Hazakostas confirms that this direction includes future expansions, though he doesn't discount the possibility of adding flight options into specific expansion ideas or zones that would benefit from it. Well, Ian, sweetie, you haven't had a single idea in Warlords of Draenor, and I'm talking about you as in an entity of Blizzard Entertainment, the World of Warcraft 220 development team. You haven't had an idea. Your end game has been diabolical. Lack of choice, lack of options, boring content. In 6.0 you gave us one Apexis crystal, daily to do. People didn't like it. We didn't like it. The forum said, we don't like this. So in 6.1 you decided, as a way of saying, okay, we hear you, you don't enjoy that, we're going to give you the ability to do as many as you want. Yes, that was me slapping myself on the face. Facepalm. If we weren't doing the one, why would we do the masses? And then in 6.2, you're bringing us a whole freaking zone, which is based around Apexis Crystal Grind. And then on top of that, that's the small part of this argument out of the way. That's the small part about not having an idea. The big part is Future expansions, no flying. Because, look, even if that... What, Ian, I'm going to drop you some fucking free advice here, mate. I would sincerely recommend you take it. Even if that was your point of view going forward, don't fucking mention it to the community. Seriously, you have a community that is already seriously fucking divided on I love flying, I don't want flying. On top of that, you've got 3 million people that have just said, fuck you anyway, because this game's pretty fucking shit at the minute. And it is. You know, yes, I could put it in more, you know, cutesy, touchy-feely ways, you know. Yeah, WoD Warcraft's not going through a great phase at the minute. It's not going through a great transition at the minute. Things could be better. Now, look, the long and short of it, at the minute, the game is fucking shit. There is so many better MMORPGs on the marketplace, content-wise, everything-wise, than WoD Warcraft right now. Again, it just stems back to how loyal people are to the game and how much time and effort's been invested into the game that so many people are actually frightened of leaving the game and all that kind of jazz. But again, argument for a different time, that. But you can't come out and say something as stupid as that. You can't. Because you've got such a divisive community on the matter. And your experiment of no flying in Warlords of Draenor has fucking failed. And I'm a person that doesn't want flying in game for relevant content. It's failed miserably. Being grounded in the game now doesn't feel like I'm immersed in Draenor. It feels like you're punishing me for some reason. What did I do wrong, Daddy? Tell me what I did wrong. Don't just put me in the corner with the fucking cone hat on and say, stay there until I say you can come out. What did I do wrong, Daddy? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy thing to say. Because you haven't made an immersive world in Draenor. Nobody fucking goes into it. Your content is so pathetic in it. Nobody goes into it. There's no immersion. You can't say we're putting no flying into a game because it allows us to create content for it when you don't create the fucking content for it. And you can't say we're not putting flying into the game because it's more immersive when your world is not immersive. The world is not immersive. Draenor is not immersive. Go into any zone now, it's fucking empty. Because there is nothing to incentivize people to go out there. You're probably going to get a few diehards in the Apexis Crystal Zones and a couple of people leveling up, and then you've got the rest of the fucking 7.9 million people stuck in their garrisons phased on top of each other going, I actually do not know why I'm playing this fucking game right now. That's what you've got, so you can't come out with comments like, and going forward. Like some Shakespearean fucking actor from back in there. And going forward, there shall be no more flying in any of the expansions. You can't say that. Because your current model for no flying has fallen flat. Absolutely flat on its face. Absolutely pancaked, mate. Pancaked. And I'm a person who believes when the content is relevant, no flying. But even I can see no flying for Tanaan bringing in for the other people. For God's sake, bringing in for the other zones. Because there is nothing happening there. There is no reason to exclude that. It feels like punishment now. Like stubborn, obstinate punishment. And I am not done with you yet, Hazakostas. How the Jesus fuck can you justify creating store mounts for your game when you come out with a comment like that? Hi folks, here's our next store mount where you can fly, but you can't fly, so fuck you! How can you justify that? If you want to fly, we have to now show footage of the Mystic Runesaber flying in the Twilight Highlands because there is no flying in the current expansion or the future ones. So if you want to go fly, go fuck yourself back off to Azeroth, you lazy bastards. Go off to Orgrimmar and float in the air on your new flying mount and let people have a look. Hey, look, I bought the new flying mount. Yeah, fine. I'm off to fucking Draenor, mate, which is the next expansion, which is the latest expansion. To do, I don't know, my Pex's Crystal Daily grind. And then you can have a debate about which one's the actual fucking loser. The person that buys the store mount is just there in the capital city hovering in the air. Look, it can fly. I paid 17 quid for this. I paid $25 for this. It can fucking fly. Mummy, tell me I can fly. That's so how the fuck can you justify store mounts if you are not going to be producing flyable content, or flyable content is only going to be in very specific zones or content, which of course is all rhetoric, 'cause it's all yet to be determined. There's no specific examples of that, saying, well, in the next expansion, although there's no flying, there is actually a whole zone where flying is really relevant, because the zone itself is going to be smashed to pieces and you have to fly from piece to piece to piece, and there's all these kind of different things going on. Nothing like that. And I think you're going to see a really good example in Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward about how flying could actually be really good for a game, because the way that they've actually smashed up the world. But I'm not going to, or the zone, you know, I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going to make this a Final Fantasy XIV flying debate. But I'm sure some people might be gravitating now, Blizzard, towards that game. Final Fantasy XIV are bringing in flying mounts at the end of June. Yes. Okay, talk more to me, Az. Talk more to me. I'm getting to be interested. But it's really, really, really weird. But hold on. Don't worry, folks. All hope is not lost, because he goes on to say, in general, though, he believes the exploration in Blizzard's massive world works better and feels better in our view when you're doing it from the ground. Yes, Ian, when it's relevant. Not when it's not relevant. Now, the way that he's phrased this, and I don't know, is it the way that Polygon have edited this? I don't know. Is Ian saying that we are looking at just progressively moving no flying into current content, but we will introduce it to previous expansions once we've left them? Or is he saying, nah? But even then, let's say we go through the whole of Warlords of Draenor now, as he said, with no flying. We move into the next expansion. Then they say, oh, by the way, you can now fly in Draenor. People are just like, great, fine. I'm not leveling there anymore. I'm not leveling up a 58,000th fucking mob because you want me now to fly in Draenor in a previous expansion, which is no longer relevant. But the saviour of WoW is just around the corner, folks. Do not fret. The saviour of WoW is just around the corner. Because he also promises... Don't ever say the word promises, Polygon, when it comes to Blizzard, please. They don't like the words promises and themselves being associated together. He also promises that Blizzard will continue working to improve its network of taxi flight paths. WoW is saved. In the game, to prevent any major frustration from this change. It's not going to do anything about the frustration, Ian. The frustration to people is not being able to get directly from point A to go directly to point B. And if it's relevant content, I don't care about that. That's their tough shit. Get immersed in the world. But when it's non-relevant content, like 6.0 and 6.1, I feel for them. I legit feel for them. The goal is to maximize convenience in getting from point A to point B. I think they've missed out B there. But retaining as much of the gameplay and depth as possible once you get to that point. Well, you know, again, I've got to say it, and I don't want to sound like a broken record. Ian, you haven't got any depth. There's no depth in WoD. None. It's as if he's playing a different game, isn't it? It's like the interview was over and the guy went, well, thank you for that interview on Warlords of Draenor. And he just went, oh, Draenor? Oh, fuck, mate. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Witcher 3. I was talking about Final Fantasy XIV. Fuck, you know, I'm sorry. Oh, I was talking about Guild Wars 2. Shit, was this a WoD interview? Yeah. Oh, fuck. I done fucked up. So yeah, even though I'm a great believer, I think we'll wrap this up now. Even though I'm a great believer in no flying in relevant areas, which I think is the best way forward, and I fully agree with Blizzard on that, is the best way forward for relevant content. Look, irrelevant content, it doesn't matter shit. It doesn't matter fucking shit. It's a video game. Don't get precious about 6.0 and 6.1. You fucked it all up anyway. Let them fly. Let them eat cake. Let them fly in Frostfire Ridge. Let them fly in Nagrand, Gorgrond, Talador, Spars of Iraq, Shadowmoon Valley. It doesn't fucking matter anymore. There's nothing there anyway. Maybe they can fly over to the Temple of Caribor, Bladespar Fortress, and see what you fucked up there. You know, they're going to see areas which nobody visits, which are great areas made specifically for people. But aye. So yes, it's bizarre, absolutely weird, bizarre thing to go. And with like I say, such a divide with people wanting flying and people not wanting flying. I think even the people that don't want flying, like myself, the people who are slightly more open-minded can see that the 6.0 and 6.1 stuff is now no longer relevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter one iota. Let them fly in it. Keep Tanaan grounded, and then whatever more story you've got to tell, because apparently, sadly, this expansion's still got legs. Ugh. Oh, God. Maybe we'll get Farallon 6.3. And whatever the story they've got to tell left, then you ground them when the new content comes out. And then you unground it when it becomes irrelevant again. It's not a fucking hard decision to make. It's really not a hard decision to make. What is the issue? Fucking hell, Blaze. Get that. Are you trying intentionally to do... Oh, no, I'm not going to go there. We're going to wrap this up. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Try and look at it from an objective viewpoint. Even if you don't want flying, or even if you do want flying, and you want it in Tanaan, you know, try and, in a normal human way, explain to me and explain to others who don't believe in flying in relevant content why you think we should be able to fly in Tanaan. But I hope you enjoyed the vid. And if you did, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Those links are in the description down below, as well as the link for the interview for this article. And I will be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye-bye.